Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since I had the pleasure of interviewing anybody. And we're going to start off this new year. We're going to start off 2023 with my friend, Nick Lozano. Now, for those of you who are listening, you will have to go out to my YouTube channel because normally we have two other guests with us, Brian Comerford and Roxanne Kaufman, and they couldn't fit it into their schedule. Whatever it be, and they're busy people. Nick and I apparently aren't as busy as those two guys. So we both have these backdrops, virtual backgrounds with milk cartons on them with the pictures of each of them, one on each carton, and it says, "Have you seen me?" So we're looking for our two guests. We'll have to get them back on the podcast real soon, but you can visually see this on my YouTube channel. So first and foremost, Nick, thank you for making me laugh when you popped that up and taking time out of your busy day, or maybe not so busy day, to hang out with me.
So what I think I heard in that intro is I'm not as important. No, I'm just joking. But no, I'm happy to be here. And like you said, unfortunately Brian and Roxanne couldn't be here, and we always have a great time speaking with them. But we're recording this towards the end of the year, and people's schedules get crazy trying to pack everything in before the holidays. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Glad to be back on the show. Thanks for having me, Peter.
Oh, you're welcome, man. So that's a lot been going on in both of our lives and stuff. And we were trying to figure out what to kind of discuss what it looks like going into 2023. Brian said, well, why don't you share my story? We can talk about that a little bit too. I'm now at Oklahoma State University. I think if you've been listening for a while, you know that I am. So I went from a W-2, excuse me, I take that back. I went from a 1099 person, independent contractor, to an employee. Now, Nick is an employee, and you've been a W-2 person for how long?
Oh, for as long as I can remember. But I'm kind of the weird person who's just always had a side hustle of some kind, whether it's like consulting or Brian and I started a record label, so I've got that now too. I'm just kind of always dipped my toes, and that's a tough transition. I imagine it has to be for you, right? Going from a W-9, and I had to give you credit being a CPA. I thought you were gonna mess it up for a second there when you're like I went from a W-2. I was like, wait, he's been filling out the wrong forms this whole time.
This whole time I
Um,
haven't. So wait. We got to take a step back. Okay, so you guys still have the podcast,
we do,
okay?
yes.
And it's exe.
It's Lead.exe, and that stands for leadership.execute. It's a bit nerdy play on words, right? Where you run a file on a Windows machine and it's a .exe file type for execute.
Okay, that was kind of nerdy, but that's kind of cool because accounts are nerdy as well. Uh, and you started a record label. Now I'm not. I didn't. We have to talk about that. So I mean, Nick does a lot of other stuff. He consulting, but I got to know about this record label before we start talking about that other stuff.
Yeah, so Brian had come to me. So those of you who aren't familiar with Brian Comfort, he has been an electronic music DJ for probably like 30 years. And he recently just released a record, and we put it on our own label because Brian was like, well, I don't want to go through all this stuff of like trying to promote it and try to get a label to sign it on, and there's like marketing things. And he's like, what do you think about just joining up and putting it under the janitor media umbrella, which is the LLC that we formed to put our podcast in and anything else we do related to that. So I was like, okay, let's just do that. So he released his album. It is out on Bandcamp right now. It's called oh man, he's gonna kill me, but he should be here. It's Ecstatic Cargoes. It is on Bandcamp. It is under E23. And what I will do is after this, I will send the link. We're going through the process right now of submitting it to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and all that. There's just so much archaic things that like so many weird bureaucratic archaic rules to music. Like I got submissions back. It's like this music has more than 15 seconds of dead air time at the end. Can you trim that so it's only 10? Like, it's like all the weird things. It's like one of those things where I'm like, just give me all the rules written out instead of
Right.
me submitting it and then finding out afterwards. Because like I'm an analytical guy, right? I'm a tech guy. You're an accountant, CPA, right? Give us the rule set, right? Give us the rules we're playing with, and we'll follow the rules.
Well,
But
I guess Dave Matthews got away with that in one of his songs, "You and Me." There's like a 30-second dead air piece, but I guess he's Dave and he got away with that, and you guys are just getting
yeah,
started.
exactly. It has its yeah, it has its things. Oh, it's consumed by ecstatic cargoes. And so that's Brian. He's DJ E23, and Chris Mosdell, who is his co-host. Actually, I'll probably get this wrong, but that's why Brian should not be on a milk carton, and he should be here in front of me. So Chris Mosdell, who wrote some of the lyrics, actually wrote a bunch of stuff for Japanese pop music in the 80s and 90s. And I believe he even had some involvement on the Thriller album as well too. He has some musical writing credits on that, and that's Thriller is probably one of the greatest selling albums of all time. That's Michael Jackson's Thriller. If people aren't familiar with that.
So you guys got a record label, and is the record label Janitor Media?
So that is under Ronin Janitor Records. Yeah.
Okay, got it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, and that was Brian's thing. I always go by the Ronin Janitor, and he's like, why don't I do that? Just has a good ring to it. So yeah, that's what we've done. And it's been fun, an interesting thing for me, pick up something different and new. A different challenge, something I've never done before. Which
You
I'm
do
sure
it.
you're going through some of that too, right? With being a teacher and teaching faculty and making that career change, right?
Yeah, it is. But you always like to do a lot of different things. You always try to stretch yourself into different ways and shapes and stuff. Because, like you said, you got a W-2, but you've got a side hustle, and you've done some consulting with me to try to teach me how to use technology. I think he gave up. I mean, it was almost somewhat of a lost cause, but
Well, I think you must have went on your way to becoming a W-2 employee. So
that had a lot to do with it. Yeah, and my role at Oklahoma State, it's twofold. One, it's this director of the School of Accounting Communication Center, which is not built, but we're in the process of building it. And the idea is to take what the university already has in writing and maybe some presentation skills at the basic foundation. And usually that's what most students walk out of college with. That, but we're going to put a lot more walls, a lot more roof, and a lot more substance to it, where we're going to go deeper into better business writing. We're going to go into, just an example, how to do a better presentation, how to set up a presentation, talk about how the essence of networking and emotional intelligence and negotiating, and set our students apart from other students who in the accounting profession who may go to Oklahoma University, but we're going to be able to show on their resume that they've successfully completed this workshop, and that those foundational skills of communication versus, well, these people over in Oklahoma don't have that. OU will more likely pick up the people from OSU. That's Oklahoma State University, not the. I just leave it at that. Most people who know the other OSU is just the.
they tried to copyright the.
They did.
It didn't go through for them.
It did go through.
Oh, it did?
It did go through.
Okay.
It went through last year.
Why did they give him that? Why did they give him?
I don't know. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a great perspective that you brought in. Of you guys are trying to take, younger college age students. I guess not everybody's young who goes to college, right? I went to a university. My freshman year I was like 25, so yeah. I was an old dude, the old guy,
Yeah.
the oldest person on earth when I'm in those classes. But that's the thing. I just remember learning technical things, right? Yeah. I don't remember learning about, emotional intelligence wasn't really a thing, but right. I don't even remember learning about personality traits even, or right. how to give I had a presentation class maybe, and I had to give one presentation. I don't remember learning speaking skills, but those are the things that I always feel like are more important in business and leadership roles, right? Because anything else I can flick on YouTube or read an article or pick up a book and learn something technical. I'm not saying the technical things aren't important. They're a great foundation, a great base that you need to keep learning on, but you need to do the same thing on those soft side skills too, right? And it's great that you guys are exposing people to that ahead of time.
Yeah, and we are, and that's what really intrigued me about accepting this job is that opportunity. I've been trying to have that impact on people who have been out in the profession probably way too long, and some who have been out there and just have developed a lot of bad habits and don't have the time to think about what can I do to change the way I am perceived? What can I do to change the way I communicate? Because accountants speak in a foreign language, accounting, and they all laugh when I say that. But then I go, have you ever talked to somebody in sales and using your language and they have the deer in the headlights look and they all shake their heads because you speak a foreign language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for them to come out with the skill set, plus part of the role of the communication center is to provide feedback,
Hmm.
which they don't get a whole lot of feedback. We did a test project. One of the classes, they had to write this memo, and the professor said, well, I usually grade it for content. Can you grade it
Hmm.
for style and grammar and all of that? And I did a sampling. It was kind of late in the term, about 60 papers. I took about 15 of them, did a sampling of it, and saw some consistencies in it, and wrote a memo back to him in the proper style to give to the students, and did this quick video. And I went, all right, but they've never had that kind of feedback.
Yeah, and I mean, especially from a tech, I work in technology for
Yep.
people who haven't heard any of the things in the past. We deal with the same kind of thing, right? Highly technical in nature, but then you got to go speak to business leaders about something highly technical, right? Leave
Right.
the technical mumbo jumbo out of it, right?
Right.
It's like I always like to tell people when you're presenting to people who aren't, it's not that they're technical, but you need to understand the audience you're presenting to, right?
Right.
And when I'm talking to non-tech people about technology things, I like to stop back and think like, how can I explain this like a 5-year-old, right? To
Right.
to the point where I don't need to leave the details. I need to be 10,000 feet above just so that somebody gets a concept. And sometimes analogies are great for that, right? And the one I always like to use is building a house
Mhm.
in technology, because people are like, well, can you build this app that does this for me? And it's like, well, what kind of house do you want to build, right? Because I can build any kind of house you want. Do you want a ranch? Do you want a craftsman? Do you want 7,000 square feet? Do you want 20,000 square feet? Do you want 800 square feet? Right.
Mhm.
And I give those concepts like when I'm speaking about building applications, right? We can build a website. That's our smaller house. That's our ranch, right? We can build an application that talks to other applications. And maybe that's our 20,000 square foot McMansion, right? So I like to use analogies a lot when I'm talking to um, people who might not be in the technical domain where you're the technical expert in that domain. I always find it's a good way to kind of like bring people to an understanding point.
This is what we need, Roxanne, because and I there she is. She's on the carton. Um,
She's missing.
she's missing. She shared with me because I'm her virtual CFO. I think you knew that fractional CFO,
Yep.
and and she's been looking at doing more, taking her content and going online with it, so on demand, online learning, and they found this organization in Dublin, Ohio, and I guess they thought maybe she was too small because they had the tech person come and be the salesperson.
Hmm.
And she said she would rather scratch her eyes out. It was
Yeah.
he was talking code. He was talking IT mumbo jumbo, like accounting mumbo jumbo, and she goes, well, I'm not doing business with them. And she goes, and they even had the gall to send a proposal. She's going, well, you didn't care enough to send your salespeople. You sent the IT person who probably does a really good job at what he does. Communication with the outside wasn't part of that skill set, and lost that piece of business.
Oh, yeah, and I can believe it. And when you were saying that, it reminded me. A friend of mine gave me this quote. It was from, I believe it's Teddy Roosevelt. It's nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care,
Yeah,
right? And that's a great instance of that, right? She could tell right away that the person speaking to her didn't really care that she didn't understand it.
right.
And to me, from a sales perspective, and you've done sales, right? Because
Yeah,
you're a W-9 employee, you're the salesman, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, if you're not tailoring your pitch or your presentation to your potential client, you're doing yourself a disservice. And the same thing goes when you're an internal, a W-2 employee, and you
Mhm,
might be that accountant or that
yeah.
CPA, and you've got to present to a different team who's not technical in that domain. You still have to sell to those people, right? And I
Right.
think that gets lost in translation sometimes, where they're like, oh, it's just a conversation between the two. But sometimes you're in a selling position, you're in a presentation, you're in a pitch position, right?
Oh, I agree. I agree. And most people, I think most technical people, unless they've had some training, they do what they see. And what they see is wrong, but they don't know that it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's, and there's been a few instances recently that I've been in a meeting thereof, and I'm going, oh, there's so much consulting work with inside this building. But you think, I mean, these are very smart people, and they deal with lots of data and stuff. But and they're talking to mostly other smart people within that know the knowledge, but some of us don't. And when they get out of this and they speak at conferences, I mean, you attend a lot of conferences, and
Hmm. Yep.
anymore it's all pretty much the same thing. It's just technical, bad PowerPoint slides. And every now and then you'll get someone who's got some humor to them, or someone knows how to do a presentation. They go, wow, this was fun. The others have just been, and but you just got to want to do it, I guess, because you
Yeah,
haven't.
yeah,
And
yeah. Like you're saying, you have to care,
yeah,
right? You have to care about who you're presenting to, taking the time to understand your audience that you're speaking to, right? And especially when it's a paying gig, right? You're getting being paid to go speak somewhere to
yeah,
someone. I feel like you owe it to them to understand who the audience is, to try to interact, to try to engage with them, to try to find points that connect with them. When I present, I always love using humor. That's just
yeah.
who I am. I mean, you see my ridiculous LinkedIn content sometimes where I have a poll as a hot dog, a sandwich.
Oh, yeah,
um,
that's right. I love that
and
one. I
yeah, and
love
somebody
that
got
one. Yeah.
mad at me. They're like, "You're ruining LinkedIn." But I'm like, you know what? If we were here in an office together, we would talk about those things anyways. So
All right.
how's this any different? But I digress. But I'm the type of person I always try to inject humor, because when you go to those presentations, sometimes I feel like that gets people moving, right? You make a joke, or I like to make dad jokes, right? So I'd say, like what did one Dorito say to the other Dorito?
What?
Cool Ranch. Yeah, yeah. So just crazy things like that. Or I'll look at my slides if I'm running behind. I'm like, oh yeah, all that's true. That's true. Next
Yeah.
slide. And I feel like it's more about understanding your audience and feeding off of that. And that's where I think it's great exposing people earlier to that, because they get to practice where the situation is not as high stakes, right? You're just doing it with your peers. Everybody's learning together. We're giving constructive feedback. And anyone who didn't have this opportunity, I'd also recommend like a Toastmasters too,
Yes.
is a great place to kind of dip your feet if you're already a professional, maybe mid-level manager. It's a great way to kind of hone your speaking skills.
Yeah, we I do tell audiences that that's why I started cutting my teeth in this whole presentation world. Um, uh, the aspect of giving these students the opportunity, one, to fail, to be critiqued, to think differently, so to learn more about the audience, and how to tailor a technical presentation to that audience through stories and metaphors or whatever. I think it sets them out on the right foot and differentiates them tremendously from those within the firm, within the company, within the accounting department, as well as those who, when they're getting hired from other schools, that they're the first ones to, wow, these guys are coming up with this foundation. We need to bring more people in from Oklahoma State University, and that's the goal, is help these kids become better, these students, these young adults, to become better in their communication skills and their communication journey, put them 3 or 4 years ahead of where they would be coming out if they didn't have this, and just make them more competitive and successful.
I mean,
And you,
that's amazing, in my opinion. I like you brought up that point of failure, right? Give them the opportunity to fail,
yeah,
and that's always something people say in tech. They're like, fail fast and fail often.
yeah,
And I also say, you can't forget about one other part of failure, right? Is the learning aspect that comes from that. If you just constantly failing and you're not learning a lesson somewhere in between there, you're kind of wasting wasting your time failing, right? You have to stop and think like, okay, what happened here? that messed up, and how can I learn from that to never do that again? And I know I've done that in my professional life. I've mistakenly deleted a database of users, and I'm like, well, my lesson is to make sure I'm in the right database when I run that code, and I will never do that again. um, and that brings me, like, one of leadership principles I always like to do is when I am working with new team members, I roll somebody on, is I often like to tell them about the stuff I messed up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it helps make a human connection, and makes them know, like, hey, you're gonna mess up and you're gonna fail, and that's fine.
Mhm.
That's what we're here for. I'm here to support you. The key principle we need to learn here is to learn from that mistake, to take something out of it, so we don't make that mistake again.
Someone told me this, took the word fail and turned it into an acronym. First attempt in learning.
Yep.
And that has stuck with me. And make the mistake. You're not going to be criticized. Hopefully, you're not criticized or humiliated or anything like that. Talk it through, figure out what you did wrong, and then just move forward and don't do it again. But feedback. So I have in my classes, I have TAs because I have a class of 150 and another class of 68. And I
And you can't
wanted,
manage that all yourself.
some days I know, God, no, I can't. Some days I could, but that's usually on a day that I'm not in class. And I wanted to get the TAs involved and to lead the class. I asked this one student, and she said, sure. And she kind of, and this was like maybe 3 hours before class. And we'll kind of see how she would react. She reacted perfectly, got there, and she started doing a presentation, and she was behind the podium and couldn't see her, but I could see her. And she was literally hugging herself. And then she would ask a question, or ask a question, try to get a response. About one beat would go by and she would lean into it. So afterwards, I just took her aside and said, look, did a great job. Couple of things about the hugging. And I said, let a pause hang out there for a bit until somebody says something. She took it personally. And I had to follow up with her the next. I heard through the student grapevine, and I followed up with her next day. I said, "Look, I made all these mistakes. You don't know any different. All I'm trying to do is help you so you can be better at it. And by the way, you did a really good job for being thrown into the fire. So first and foremost, keep doing what you're doing, and I'm here to provide you feedback as the director of the communications center. Even though I'm teaching this class, it's still one of my roles. Ask for help. I keep telling you, call me in. I'll sit and watch you guys, and I will give you constructive feedback. It's not personal, and we'll just only make you feel better. And if you'd rather not me do it, then video yourself and watch yourself. Professor Margaritis, we'd rather you come in. I hate watching myself.
I think that's a great point, right? That you brought up, is the ability to take feedback, right? Don't be one of those people like, oh, I'll take feedback, but I only want positive feedback,
Right.
right? And that, like, when you run into that as a leader, it's like, okay, well, we need to just have a conversation here that this is just constructive criticism. You can either take it or not, or leave it, but
Right.
this is not attack on you personally. You're trying to help raise them up so that they can be better than where they are now. And especially things with, like, that speaking, it's so easy to be stuck in that moment and not realize that you're doing things,
Right.
or rambling, or doing the ums and the ahs. That everybody does that at some point. But it's easier to get those things if either somebody is watching you, or you go back and watch the video yourself. And I will say, one way to get good at speaking is what we're doing right here. It's just having a podcast.
Yeah.
If you go back and listen to my first episode with Brian, it is absolutely horrible. It is, sorry, Brian, you're not here, but you know my feelings on this. It is an absolute horrible train wreck of us talking over each other. But over time, this has just helped me hone in on my communication skill, my style, which has then allowed me to then hone in on speaking in public, because I'm used to it now. It's just something I do. And like you said before we got on here, like, how long can we talk? I was like, well, we've got 55 minutes. I could talk for all 55 of those if you would like. So practice, failure, like you said, is your first attempt at learning.
Absolutely. And it's something that um, that's been fun to interact. I love the students. I got great students. They're really nice, and the faculty have been very welcoming. The university's been very welcoming. But two big things in this transition. I've been a Mac guy for 15 to 20 years. I'm a Windows guy now. You see these 10 fingers? They're
Mhm.
10 thumbs. The first 3 months, these were 10 thumbs. Well, okay, no, let's rephrase that. They were 8 thumbs. 2 fingers were working really well a lot when I kept getting mad at what I was just stumbling over. It was frustrating. And I'll be completely vulnerable here. I have not really used Excel in 12 years, 13
Mhm.
years. And I was doing the homework assignment, so I know what the students had to do. And there's this Excel spreadsheet that I had to turn into a graph. Took me 2 hours, and it was 4 columns and 4 rows of data. It took me 2 hours. I was on YouTube. I couldn't figure it out, and finally figured it out. And I went, well, there's 2 hours. That was actually well spent, because it frustrated me to the point that I realized my skills are really, really weak, and I've got to hone them up. That's fine. But calendar hijacking has probably been my just biggest, all of a sudden I've got the day available, and how did this get on my calendar? Oh, it's a meeting. Oh, I probably should attend, but
Yeah, that's that calendar hijacking's real. I'd like to make a point here real quick before we go to that, but it was something else you said uh is about that Excel sheet, right?
yeah,
Um, and I always like to use things like that as a great example, a great reminder to have a beginner's mindset, right? It's really easy to be an expert in something and forget what it's like to be new at something.
yeah,
And what you just had was a feeling of being a beginner. Um,
yeah.
and all you have to do is keep that memory with you when you're making content or course stuff for students, and remember that moment, what it was like to be brand new, and not forget that, there's points where you might need to explain stuff more and make sure that somebody understands something that might be inherent to you. So I would leave that as a little nugget of what you just said to
That's
me there.
that's such a great point, because there's a lot of things that I've done this first semester that's been new. A new learning management system, a new class, a new textbook, a new way of looking at accounting, new faculty members, new everything. And it really, I felt like I got all thumbs and no feet. Um, but and people would say, "How you doing?" Well, I'm drinking out of a high pressure fire hose here. It's really, but it's over about the beginning of right before Thanksgiving that fire hose started to slow down a little bit. And I'm a lot, as frustrated I was for 3 months. I'm a lot more confident in what I'm doing. But man, that was a rough 3 months.
Yeah, it's but you'll always have that now, right? Because
Yeah,
the LMS, which is a learning management system for people who don't know, colleges use them, universities and corporate organizations use them to do content and test and
yeah,
stuff like that. But to my point, is like, your students experience that as well too, right?
oh yeah,
They come in straight off the street. They're at a high school. Who knows if they use a learning management system or not, or if they even used Excel. There's so many high schools and lower education where Google just basically gives them so much stuff for free that it's easy for a school system just to be on Google, like
yeah,
Google Sheets
yeah,
and all that. So it's a great, and like I said, it's a great reminder to remember what it's like being new in that environment, because you're going through it now as faculty,
yeah,
not as a student, but you're using the same things that the students are going to
yeah.
use.
Yep. Yep. And this class is by the way for sophomores. I have a few freshmen in the class, and I try to find out who they are early and just go, okay, we're learning, especially this term, we're learning this together. I'm a freshman here too. Just not a student, not a student. No, this is my first time teaching here at this university. So don't feel, don't be afraid to ask questions.
I like that. So the funny thing, I'll leave it. So when I had a professor, I was like, what's he, my stats professor or something, like, or business calculus. Um, and we all go in the room. He's a younger looking guy like me at the time. and he's just sitting down in the room. It's the first day of class, and like obviously you don't know what the teacher looks like, and he's just sitting in the room, and he's like, this guy's sitting there, and he's like, what? How long before the professor not shows up? Can we just go home? And this guy just keeps talking. He's like, oh, like I think we should all just go home. Should we take a vote on just all going home? And he's like, has anybody seen this professor? And this is before, like everybody had Facebook and whatever, and you could look anybody up.
Yeah.
And he takes a vote. He's like, okay, we should all go home. And everyone's like, are you sure? You think the professor will know? And he's like, I don't know. Let me ask him. And he turns around, he puts a hat on. He's like, what do you think? Do you think we should go home? And then he stands up. He's like, hi, I'm Professor like such and such. He's like, I know I look like I'm 17, but I'm not. So it was a great reminder, great icebreaker. And the class just instantly felt, like really close to him. Like, he used humor as an icebreaker to connect with his audience. And I know you're big on that too.
Well, what I do with these guys is this class has a really bad reputation around university, around business school, because it's accounting, it's hard, it's different from the others. However, I came in, I said, okay, I know what you've heard about this class, but here's the positive thing. You're taking financial and managerial accounting merged together for a semester versus having to take each individually for a semester each. So you got a semester that you don't have to really deal with accounting. That's the upside. And then I went, and this is your first entry into accounting. So I brought my juggling balls with me. And I said, anybody juggle? They went, nobody juggling. So I threw them and they all fell to the ground. Oh, God. And I did it again. And I think after the third time I went, this is how you can feel the first 2 weeks. You're learning how to juggle. And you're not going to juggle well. And it's going to be very new. And then I started juggling and then dropping them, juggling and dropping. So by the end of the term, you should be able to keep most of the balls up in the air, as long as you've been coming to class and doing all the right things. If you haven't been, you'll still be dropping the balls all the time. And that story, that intro got around the business college almost immediately. I had a few people stop by and go, are you the juggling professor?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. I just had my doorbell ring and I may have to sign something. So let's pause this for a second.
Yep, no worries.
So I just got interrupted because the UPS guy needed a signature. So where were we, Brian?
I don't know. Let's ask Brian.
I just saw Brian out of the corner of my eye. Like, what? Man, that was terrible. Where were we, Nick?
Oh, you're telling your story about being the juggling professor, being known as the juggling professor. Yeah.
But that made it that helped connect them with me, and and that's I'm actually finally that my guitar. I'm finally learning how to play the guitar. Started December 1st. I'm taking online lessons, and I'm thinking about the very first class of the spring term is taking my guitar in. Yeah, I just started learning this back on December 1st, and this is all I could get, and see how far I can improve by the time the end of the term shows up.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, just trying different things like that, because it's all about the audience, right?
Yeah, it is. And whether you're presenting, like we said, externally or internally, it's understanding who you're speaking to, right?
Absolutely. So I guess we're not going to talk about too much about 2023 because we're getting close to being out of time.
Brian and Roxanne might be better for that.
Yeah. They tend to pontificate a little bit more. Whoops, that came out.
Well, I mean, Brian just sounds like a late night radio DJ anyways. So, it'd probably be more soothing coming from his voice.
From his voice. I said, I looked right at you. I looked over there and I went, oh, that's Brian. Oh, okay.
Well, that is Brian. Yes.
Yes. So what's on your radar for this next year? If you have like one goal you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think one goal that I'm trying to achieve is just, trying to figure out something more to do with this record label thing, right? It's more of a challenge for me, something that I've never attempted. And like you're juggling balls, right? That's what I'm doing right now. I don't know how to juggle these balls. So I'm trying to get more into that. And I think Brian wants to do another release of some of his old catalog content.
Okay.
So I'm just taking some of the skills I have and seeing if I can adapt them here somewhere else. That's
Okay.
one thing I always think is great about learning, right? You can always take something you've learned somewhere else and find a way to adapt it in another domain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I haven't quite figured out what mine is. I mean, I am going to learn how to play the guitar. I've been threatening it for a number of years. I'm going to stick with it. I don't know. Last year there was a lot of firsts. There was a lot of things. There was a lot of picking up and moving to a state out of Ohio that I guess I have to go to states that have O's in them now. I guess maybe Oregon will be Oregon or Oregon State University will be my next. And just kind of assimilated to an area that I really didn't know much about. And I think this next year I want to get to know Oklahoma better because I think it's probably the worst kept secret, or no, the best kept secret. That's right. Out there, I don't know. I've come to really like this area, enjoy it, enjoy the people, and but I want to explore it more. And I did not know this prior to getting here, but a section of Route 66 goes through Oklahoma,
Oh,
and I'm taking some time off at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to go through Route 66 and stop and see the big blue whale and find some funky restaurant and just kind of, I've always wanted to do that, but I never thought, I didn't really realize it came through Oklahoma. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to do, next year's going to be more about exploring.
I like that idea. And there was this guy I heard years ago. I know we're kind of on time, but Alistair Humphreys, he had this book about micro adventures.
Yeah.
And he's like, people always talk about they don't have enough time to have an adventure. He's like, if you work 9 to 5, think about the adventure you can have on the off time from 6 to 8 a.m.
Yeah.
What mini adventure can you have inside of there? Like you said, part of Route 66, go find that, see if you can fit something in. Make sure you make that time for yourself to do something fun and interesting, exciting. Right?
It goes to Missouri, comes through Tulsa, and it goes south into Oklahoma City. Stillwater is about an hour northeast of Oklahoma City and about an hour west of Tulsa. So we're just outside of that, but I don't care. And that might be something I won't do between 6 and 8, but weekend trips once I kind of get this all figured out. And by the way, I'm closer now to Denver than ever before. And apparently the real estate mogul's got some places. We need to get the gang together in Denver at one of his Airbnbs. And
That's funny. Last time I talked to Brian, he was like vacuuming one of his Airbnbs. I'm like, are you vacuuming? Yeah.
Well, buddy, thank you for taking time out. It's always a blast talking with you. And it's even funnier when we can have fun at their expense.
There you go. Thanks for having me on, Peter.
All right, buddy. You take care.
You too.